Good Friday, Tony. It's Friday. I'm your host. Welcome into Big Talk, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I'm Sam Sprunger. Tony, it's Friday.
It's Friday.
Tony Hollinsworth, as always. We're joined by him on the other side of the screen, and a lot happening outside of the world of college football. Monday comes our preview of the national championship between Ohio State and Notre Dame being played on Monday night at the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, Georgia. But we're going to talk about that on Monday. We're going to pick up where we kind of left off a little bit about last episode was Big Ten basketball, and we left off with Michigan State and Michigan being at the top of the Big Ten. A little has changed since then, Tony. Michigan falls to Minnesota on a dramatic ending. Minnesota hits a 3 at the buzzer from the logo. Mr. Garcia comes through, and the Gophers get their first win. I guess, Tony, how does this kind of lend, and do you think this is the beginning of the end, so to speak, for Michigan?
I don't know if it's the beginning of the end, but I do think it starts to bring them back down to. I think it brings them back down to earth a little bit. I mean, they're still sitting at 13-4, which, again, compared to what they were last year, is impressive. And like I said, they do have some top quality wins. I mean, they beat at the time 11th ranked Wisconsin. They beat 22 Xavier. They lost in a close game to Oklahoma, and they beat number 22 UCLA. And they just beat Washington prior to losing to Minnesota. So they do have some quality wins. However, I still think that Michigan is a quote-unquote fraud as far as competing for the Big Ten title as it stands right this year. But, like I said, too, it's still young in the season. There's still an opportunity they could turn it around. They may use it as an opportunity to, we still have time to turn it around. And overall, at the end of it, too, they're sitting at, let's see, they're sitting at 5-1 in the Big Ten right now. So I mean, you're still doing pretty well as far as conference play. You beat 2 newcomers in Los Angeles. You beat a newcomer at home. So you're off to a pretty decent start. And eventually it's one of those two who kind of wants the game more. And it maybe have even been one of those that Michigan looked at Minnesota and goes, it's fine, and come to find out it's a trap game because Minnesota wanted that win more than Michigan did, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, you're completely allowed that. I don't know that it's necessarily them showing and becoming the fraud that they are when it comes to the contention of the title. I think this is Big Ten at its best. I think it's a team that's performing well and playing well, getting put up against a team that is better than what their record is. I don't care what anybody says. I like Ben Johnson at Minnesota, and he does a lot with not a lot, if that makes sense. He gets a lot of production out of players that might not be the most productive or the most sought after for production. And he gets results out of them. So I think it's one of those. It was a perfect storm. It was at the barn in Minnesota. It was overtime. You got the home crowd behind you. And I mean, look at what. And granted, it only happened for a half, but look what happened with Purdue at Washington last night or a couple nights ago on Wednesday. They were up by 8 points at the half. And it took Purdue finally waking up, but they were at home. They had those comforts, and I think it's just with the Big Ten and probably even major college basketball, even your worst teams in your conference can jump up and bite somebody every once in a while because that's just the nature of the beast, Yep. And so I think I guess necessarily right now it doesn't necessarily take away my thought that maybe Michigan could still be in contention. I still don't think they will, but I'm saying that loss itself doesn't necessarily. They're going to have to put a string of them together, and the thing is they've got a pretty good schedule coming up
Mhm.
that we're going to find out relatively quickly whether or not they're a real deal or not.
Oh yeah, I mean, you not only you have to travel to Purdue, you know, and we even talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I kind of wonder your thoughts on if Penn State has maybe cooled down a little bit. But I mean, they have to deal with a tough Penn State team. You know, Rutgers, they have to go to Piscataway to deal with. That's not exactly easy. And then they have to host Oregon all before. I'm not going to necessarily call it an easy game, but a game that I feel is very winnable against IU. And then they have to deal with Purdue again. So I mean, we really are going to see over the next month, here at the end of January and going into the beginning of February, what does this Michigan team really look
Right.
like, and
Yeah.
and are they at least able to hold their own? I'm not saying they have to go through and win. They don't even have to win, you know, 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7, whichever the case may be. Are they able
Mhm.
to at least hold their own and show that there's potential and that the future is bright in Ann Arbor, and not, oh man, this is going to be a long rebuild from what Juwan Howard left for the next Michigan coach.
Yeah, you got Northwestern, Purdue, Penn State, at Rutgers, at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
So you went through. I think Penn State is one of those. If you remember, Nebraska last year
Mm-hmm.
couldn't win on the road, but was very tough to play at home. I
Yep.
think that's what Penn State is. Although they did give Michigan State an awful lot to handle
Yes, they did.
a couple nights ago. Uh, at the Breslin Center, the Michigan State coming out 90-85 on that one, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about that a little bit on Wednesday. That Michigan State needed to. They've got to match up with Illinois on Sunday. They got to make sure they're not looking past the Nittany Lions, and it almost looked like, Tony, they started to, and then wait, let's put these guys away real quick, and then we'll go to Sunday.
Yeah, very much so, and that's what it kind of looked like to me. And I know we talked about it before we went on the air. So for anybody who doesn't know that I do root for Michigan State. As a true fan and in true fan fashion, I have a lot of skepticism and some paranoia and some, the weird oddities and whatnot that you have to do as a fan to hopefully propel good spirits and good vibes to your team to potentially, propel them to a win. I have not watched a single Michigan State game all year. And some of you may say, wow, how can you claim to be a Michigan State fan and you don't even watch your own team? That's because I started to watch that Michigan State and Penn State game. And I'm like, oh wow, this is really close. Oh wow, this is getting even closer. Oh crap, they're almost tied.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I did? I'm like, I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna take my shower, and then I'll come back. And oh hey, Michigan State's ahead. I started watching it again. Oh, here comes Penn State. I'm like, nope, we're cutting it off. We're watching something else, cutting it off.
I'm gonna call you Michael because you're not superstitious, but you are a little stitious.
Just a little bit. How the turntables.
Yeah. uh, so yeah, I know we stemmed off or branched away from the Michigan chatter to kind of go the off ramp to East Lansing from Ann Arbor, but let let me go back to Michigan. I think we're gonna find that they're gonna be okay. I think, but
Mhm.
I think they are gonna the lose the oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Somebody just rang my doorbell, so it threw me off. Oh,
Oh,
I think we're gonna see they're gonna solidify that they're gonna be a tournament team, but I think they are gonna
right.
fall out of contention in this next stretch. So, I think that's where I'm sitting right now with Michigan. For Michigan State, I think that was a slight hiccup, and you know what? They probably sensed that Tony was watching, so they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, we gotta make it look good," and it made you nervous. And then, oh, Tony stopped watching. Okay, let's put these guys away.
Like this guy's watching. We're gonna give him a little bit of anxiety. You want a heart attack? You wanna have like the brink of a heart attack? Oh, we got you. Don't even worry about
Yeah, it's I reiterate what I said at the close of the last show. the Big Ten probably needs to worry a little bit that Michigan State is performing the way they are. If they beat Illinois, they're getting the big steps out of the way. Now Michigan State has one heck of a stretch on their
Mhm.
schedule to where it's a bear.
Oh yeah.
In like I don't know, I think it's in 2 weeks they go through like five in a row that are ranked,
Yeah, they deal
and
with so really starting February 8th. Sorry to cut you off.
no, you're all
Um,
right.
they host Oregon, then they host Indiana. They have to go to Illinois this time. They have
Mm-hmm.
to host Purdue, then they go to Ann Arbor to face Michigan, then they go to Maryland, and then they host Wisconsin, and then to end the season they go to Iowa, and then they host Michigan. So I
Yeah,
mean, they have a lot of those ending games. And again, even though Michigan's only ranked 20th at the moment, Wisconsin's ranked 24th, they could potentially fall out. But at the moment, some of their last few games, they have
yeah.
one, two, three, four, five ranked opponents, all in the top 25.
Yeah, so I think they've benefited from a front loaded or a back loaded Big Ten
Mm-hmm.
schedule to where they're gonna. But I think Michigan State's that good too. Let's move to a couple of the other teams that USC keeps coming up. They're only 3-3, but their wins are so obscurely odd. They they beat Illinois at Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They have oh shoot, I just had their schedule pulled up and
They
I
say
didn't
they
keep it up there.
they beat
They
Indiana in
yeah,
Bloomington.
they like their wins have just been really no, they got beat by IU at IU 82-69.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can't read very well.
That's right. They beat Iowa.
They did beat Iowa.
Now granted Iowa's on the road. Uh but like they are just an odd. Eric Musselman's got is a great coach. I mean, he went to back Elite Eights, I believe it
Mm-hmm.
was with Arkansas, then took the job this last year with USC after they had kind of a mass exodus, and they got rid of their coach and a mass exodus of underperformance from last year, and then the multiple players either leaving the program or going to the draft. And so we weren't expecting a ton. They're 11-6 overall, but just what kind of makes me feel not weird about them, but just they're playing very well against the good teams.
Yeah. Oh, and it's kind of weird too because when I'm looking at USC schedule right now, they didn't really play anybody for the first few games. Like the
Yeah.
the one other Power 4 team that they faced was California. They lost that 71-66, and
Yeah.
then
Sorry.
they really start getting into it with against Oregon. And then they kind of go back into they face a bunch of nobody schools, Montana State, CSU, Northridge, whatever Southern University is. And then they start to get
You don't
back in
know
the
where
Power 4 in
Southern is?
conference. I don't
It's
know where
the
Southern is.
Southern and Grambling. You know the Bayou Classic or whatever that they play football wise every year.
No.
I believe Southern is a historically black university,
Okay.
HBCU or college or
Okay.
university.
Ah.
They're in the Louisiana area,
Ah.
but
The more you
the
know.
I'm looking at numbers here. Averages. They've got 5 averaging double digits. Like that's an oddity from a team that is probably going to finish in the low part of the Big Ten. But it lends to the fact of when these guys are hitting and maybe a couple of guys from the bench are hitting,
Mm-hmm.
they can beat Illinois. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or they could beat a Purdue,
Mm-hmm.
or they could beat an IU, or give Michigan State a heck of a run at the Breslin Center, or even beat them in Southern Cal if they play, or in Southern California if they play each other there. I know
Right.
this year Southern Cal and UCLA go they go to USC and UCLA, don't they? Michigan State, you had their schedule up just a second ago.
Yeah,
But
I can pull
let
that
me
back up.
let me chat about, you've got Desmond Claude. He's in the in the early runnings and the prognostication of first team Big Ten.
Mhm.
Like a lot are saying, he's in the one of the top 5 players in the league, and for that he's averaging 16.4 points a game, and it's just. I don't know what it is about USC that I always am drawn to see what they're doing, because it seems like, well, even if they're not beating them, they're competing with some of these teams. Now, they did get beat by Michigan, not soundly, but enough distance between. They weren't really. It wasn't uber competitive, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really a thing of oddity to me that USC has all this turnover. They have some people come back, or some transfer in and
Hmm.
things like that. But for the most part, Eric Musselman was working with anybody that came in with him from the portal,
Hmm.
or a slight here or there. But for the most part, they're to me, I think they're not the overperformer of the year, but they're one of the ones that I'm at least recognizing at this point.
Yeah, and to answer your question, so Michigan State actually faces USC and UCLA back to back, 3 days apart. So they face USC on
Yeah,
February 1st and then UCLA on February 4th.
and I think that's what kind of like what Purdue's doing now. They play tomorrow against Oregon, but they
Hmm.
just played, or they played Washington. I think for the most part, if you're hitting one out on the Pacific Northwest, you're
Hmm.
hitting both of them. And if you're
Yeah.
going to LA and hitting one, you're hitting both. For anybody that has to travel more than 2 time zones, I think probably.
Yeah. And I mean, realistically, that's not bad too. I know that was one thing that a lot of people criticized a lot of the conference expansion for was, not just for football, because football, you're only out there for, at maximum a couple of days as far as practicing, getting acclimated and whatnot. Basketball, it's like, okay, well, you're out there for potentially a little bit longer for stretches. And it's like that. Yeah. Within 3 days, that's not necessarily bad, especially for Michigan State, because heck, you're basically in the same exact city, same exact area. You can already get a little bit more acclimated. Might even potentially work out a little bit better because you're able to get more easily acclimated to that, and then you can come home when you're finished. So I know a lot of people were hesitant about that. I think they're still hesitant about it more on the ACC side, because you've only got 2 teams traveling from West Coast, then you have more teams going from East to West. So I do understand a little bit of the worry and hesitation, but I think so far with how they've done a lot of the schedules, I think it's working out to not be as bad as what people first pushed it out to be.
Yeah, I agree. Also, USC, their guard Wesley Yates got freshman of the week honors this last week for his performance against Illinois, win at number 13 Illinois, and a loss at IU. He averaged or he scored 33 points and in the week for those 2 games. So 18 at the loss at IU, and that would be 15 then
Yeah.
in the game against Illinois. Yeah, this those guys are my. I wouldn't say they're my highly surprised, but I'm interested and intrigued by them, because that means if they're doing that, they've got the potential. I worry about when they play Purdue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Because which USC team is going to show up?
Hmm.
Um, so it's a conundrum in that aspect that I don't want to fall victim to the USC bug. The one team that's kind of surprised me, at least in league play, actually there are a couple and they're tied at 2-4 each. UCLA and Ohio State. I thought Ohio State would be a little bit more. I mean, granted,
Yeah.
we're only 6 games into it, but
Yeah.
I also expected them to be 4-2 rather than 2-4. Same with UCLA. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, UCLA could come up and steal this Big Ten championship away,"
Yeah.
and here they are. Mick Cronin running into the last game. I forget who they played the last game. I can look that up or
They say they
attempt
just
to.
played Rutgers, Maryland, and Michigan in their last 3 games, and they lost all 3.
I forget after which game he was at Jay Billis raked him over the coals because he said that basically Mick Cronin was selling out his team and saying he wasn't doing anything wrong. It was everybody else during a press conference. Now, I didn't see the press conference, so I'm not gonna, pile on to that. But if somebody like Jay Billis is saying that, usually there's some pretty good smoke at that point. If Jay Billis is stepping out there and saying, you know what, that's not the way to do it. If you want to say that in behind the closed doors, do it.
Mhm.
That's fine. But don't not tell everybody and then go into a press conference and just rail on them.
Right. Well, and it is weird too, because if you look at where UCLA started out, they started out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They were 10-1 at
Right.
one point. They faced North Carolina at home. They end up only losing by 2, so it's not a completely devastating loss. Then they host Gonzaga and they win. And now they're on a 4-game losing streak as they really get into Big Ten play, because they lose in Lincoln to Nebraska, they lose to Michigan, they get dominated by Michigan, and then they also lose and get dominated really by Maryland and Rutgers, both on an East Coast trip for them. And then honestly, it's not going to get any easier, because then you've got to host Iowa and you have to host Wisconsin, both teams who have obviously taken a little bit of some steps back, over the last couple of years, but historically within the last 5 or 6 years, those are two of the really tough teams basketball wise in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Maryland's doing better than what I assumed, what I assumed they would do. And
I'm
freezing up, am I?
A little bit on my end, at least. I figured it's me.
Okay. Well, Maryland is performing about where I assumed. IU is. I don't know what IU is, Tony. I know we talked about this last.
It's Indiana University, buddy. It's a school in Bloomington, Indiana. They wear crimson and cream.
Yeah, well,
that's who IU is.
They're very well. The fact remains is, they are so their game against Illinois, their loss at at home against Illinois. We talked about it on Wednesday because they played Tuesday night, and that was a thumping. But I don't think I had seen any of the reports of the crowd chanting "Fire Woodson" and walking out before the end of the game in mass. And if that's not, and I'm not saying that crowd or the public necessarily should control who gets relieved of their duties,
right?
But that's a big negative coming to Mike Woodson if that is indeed the case. And I've seen videos of it, so it's not like that somebody's making it up. It's legitimately happening, and I don't know how he recovers from it. I know Luke Goody went straight to the it was during a press conference that day or that night, Tuesday night, said that's fine. You guys want to do that now? That's fine. Don't come back when we turn it around. I don't know if they're going to turn this around, Tony.
I say that's the thing is you can say that, but then my first question, if I'm a fan, is okay, when are you going to turn it around, and what are you going to do?
Yeah, how about you turn it around and make me regret my actions?
Because he's been the head coach of IU for what, 4 or 5 years now.
I believe this is his 4th year.
So I mean, and where has Indiana gone in that 4 years?
They've been to 2 tournaments and had 1 opening round win. It was the year they got kind of screwed where they played Wednesday in Dayton and had to fly and play Friday out in the West.
Yeah. So I mean, you haven't won the Big Ten. Like you said, you've made
haven't even actively competed for it.
Exactly. You haven't actively competed for it. You haven't really done anything as far as the actual, the March Madness bracket or to anything as far as competing for a national title. So, you know,
Right.
4 years, 4 years, you've had the opportunity then that most coaches don't get in almost any sport. Bring in the guys that you want, build the culture that you want, build the guys that, okay, this is the guy I want to bring in that I think is going to install my culture to
Mhm.
get these guys to believe in what I'm doing. And you have absolutely nothing to show for it. So, I mean, for IU fans, you know, they're upset about it. You know, like we talked about last episode of this is IU basketball. You know, IU football, with the exception of this past year, is usually not great. So Hoosier fans are like, okay, football's on, cool. We're waiting for basketball season because that's our strong suit.
The
And
other
they're
way
and
this
they're
year.
not doing it. And they haven't done it for about the last 4 years. And IU fans are frustrated by it. So I mean, for me, I don't blame the fans at all for saying, hey, it's time for you to get fired and move on. Time for the good
As a
old boy
Purdue
club to
fan,
quit.
I hope Mike Woodson stays stays in place.
Of
But
course.
but you know as much as I've said it a couple of different times. College basketball in the Big Ten Conference is better when IU's good.
Yes. Yeah.
It makes it more competitive, more fun to watch. It gives us one more team to have viability over, and the pedigree that they have. I grew up hating IU because, dang it, they were always good.
Yep. As you're saying, and for you, even as a Purdue fan, which win is sweeter? When Purdue's really good and Indiana's good and you beat them, or when Purdue's really good and it's like, oh man, IU's just kind of limping in here. They're not really anything. Like, cool, we beat you, but it
1
would have been
point, 40 points,
sweeter.
Tony, doesn't matter. I
Okay.
love thumping the daylights out of them or even squeaking one out and really ticking them off. That's fine either way, as long as the black and gold is ahead at the end. But all right, well, it's going to be a fabulous finish to the conference. We still have a couple of about 6 more weeks left of conference games, and a lot can happen in that time. But that's going to wrap up everything for this week, Tony. Next week we kick off with the national championship preview. But right now we're wrapping up a good solid week of Big Talk. And why don't you let everybody know where they can find us?
You can find us on Facebook at Big Talk. That's B1G Talk instead of I. Big Talk on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, the app formerly known as Twitter, aka X, and up until at least Sunday, unless something changes. You can find us on TikTok at B1G_talk. Again, until Sunday, unless something changes. Find us on TikToks. You can also find us 3 times a week on the All Sports All Plays Network, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you had best believe, throwing it out there, that Sam is amazing at putting out the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and also through the Lounge Sports Network, which is a umbrella under the Lounge Media Network and Lounge Media Group.
Yes, sir. So you're telling me that I'm gonna have to redo this graphic that I had going for so long without the T on it that I'm just gonna have to do it again.
I mean, all you have to do is just take the T out and you're fine.
Or I could put an X over that, right?
Oh, there you go. Move the X over to the T.
No, I still got to do something with it, so I might as well just take it out. But
you know what you could do? You could spill the T.
Or dump the T in the bay.
Ooh, there you go. True American way.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming in this week and listening to our shenanigans here on Big Talk College Sports with a Midwest Perspective, blue collar and blue blood. For Tony Hollinsworth, I'm Sam Sprunger. We'll see you next week.